Are you still relying on passwords to protect your business? What if I told you they're putting you at risk? In this episode, we're diving into the real truth about passwords versus biometrics and what it means for your business. Trust me, you won't want to miss this.
Welcome to the Cyber CEO podcast, where we explore business growth, innovation, and technology with insights from successful entrepreneurs.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Cyber CEO. I'm Haree, and today we're diving into a topic that every business owner, entrepreneur, and IT manager should have on their radar: passwords versus biometrics for authentication. Which one is more secure, and what does the future hold? We're going to break it all down so you know exactly what to focus your efforts on when it comes to protecting your business. And joining me today is someone who knows a thing or two about this topic, Adrian Clements, Regional Director here at ICE Connect. So Adrian, do you think traditional passwords still have a place in business security, or are they being phased out for good?
Hi, Harry. Thanks for inviting me on. Yeah, a place in business security, definitely for now. I think things are in transition, things are changing. Pre-internet, we had lots of other tools. Everything had its weakness, and we're going through a phase now of partial internet adoption and passwords, and then heading on to the full internet, everything in the cloud. What's going to be the way where that's going to end up? It's hard to tell. Biometrics are definitely the next step, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. It's a journey we're on, and password managers and MFA and things like that, which we'll look at their steps on this journey and getting passwords away from people, because people are the unreliable issue in this. Yeah. That's the journey we're on. We're taking the control. So the control is technical, not human.
Do you know something you said at the start there was really interesting? We're moving everything to cloud. Previously, everything sat in our offices, in the servers in our server room, and on local computers with little access to internet, which meant the data never really escaped your physical premises. And now it's all on cloud. Passwords are more important than ever, because now you really do need to think about securing it. I say passwords, but some level of security. And I don't know if you remember, I certainly do. Back in the day, and it still happens, people share passwords across teams. Oh, this person is off today. Let's share their password out, and that person's off. Oh, what's their password to access their computer? I understand when the data sat in your building and no one else had access to it, it wasn't such a major issue, right? Now it's a major issue because it's in the cloud. You need to make sure you've got the best level of security.
Yep, I completely agree with that. And that is the challenge. In the old days, lock the front door.
Yeah.
Nobody's in the building. Your world is secure. Now there's no front door to lock, so we need alternatives. And the password, as you say, shared passwords, bane of my life, certainly, working in an MSP. It's a particular challenge for tech, because you naturally have to deal with your client systems. So how do you log in as a client and work on their systems without knowing their passwords? Whole new technology has evolved to handle that one problem. It's a major issue for us. Within working teams in the business, same issue applies. You've got 5 people accessing a website to do a particular function, and they all use the same username and password.
Yeah. And that's had to evolve, obviously, now. So we're at a point in time where everyone needs their own logins. Everyone needs their own level of access. You might have person A only needs access to, let's say they've got an e-commerce website, just to see the orders and make sure they're going through. Person B needs to process the orders, and person C might work in finance and download all the financial data. Individual access gives you greater control over who's got access to what, the level of security, and a bit of audit logging to see who did what, where, and when. Just in case something goes wrong, you can figure out who needs retraining or how to go back a few steps to fix that problem, right?
And absolutely. You're right. And the key to that is it's not so much, having a particular password for a particular website. Mm-hmm. It's saying, who is it that is doing this? It's identifying the individual. And this is Joe, John's, whoever's password. Yeah. It's their access. This is them doing it. And that can give them access to a whole raft of different systems, knowing it's them specifically that are doing it.
Yeah.
We've got brilliant technology using SSO, single sign-on, where you sign on in your Microsoft environment. That gives you access rights to a whole set of non-Microsoft systems by virtue of knowing who you are and that you've signed on through a secure mechanism.
Yeah.
That's a really powerful tool. It's about identifying the individual and knowing who it is. If you're sharing data or sharing access to systems, then it's still you doing it. The audit trail is key. Who did this? Who made that change? Who said, who sent this email? You've got to know who it is that's responsible.
And let's just go back to the password sides for a second. What's wrong with passwords at the moment? Because we've moved from shared passwords. Everyone has their own individual passwords, but it's still not foolproof. It's still not a perfect system. There are weaknesses within it.
So there's two issues with passwords. One is people and the other is tech. So the people side of it is quite straightforward. People are lazy, so they have one password, which they use across multiple locations. It's obvious how that gets hacked and used.
Yes.
Not really important in covering that. If a password isn't complex enough, and it's not always obvious to people what complexity means, then a machine can deal with that. Now, you can stop a machine dealing with it. I've got a presentation I do for clients sometimes on password length, and it's just a table. It may not be entirely accurate, but if you've got a 4-character password, it can be brute forced virtually instantly. If you go up to a 15-character password on a decently pokey machine, it takes about 12 years.
Wow.
For those 12 years, hasn't anybody noticed this machine is sitting there trying to break into a system?
If the machine lasts 12 years.
Exactly. So my point is that the weakness here is, yes, the people are lazy and use weak passwords and reuse them, but system designers, system managers, us in our MSP, if we're not monitoring the password attempts and the failed attempts, then we're leaving a door open there as well. That's the other weakness of this system. We should be monitoring this in ICE Connect, where we've got the tools to do it. We monitor it.
Yes.
But we don't, not all systems have those facilities. So you can't monitor this stuff necessarily.
You mentioned sharing passwords across multiple websites. I've certainly been guilty of that in the past. When passwords were a thing of the norm in the early days, I had one password across every single website.
For shame.
For someone who works in IT, I get that. That very quickly changed to that one password with maybe a changed few characters representing the website I was dealing with. And that over the last 5 years has evolved into 20-character passwords, completely random, uppercase, lowercase, characters, you name it. No chance I could remember any of it. And I don't know if you remember, there was a website. There still is a website. It's called haveibeenpawned.com, PAWNED. You can go on there and see if any provider you're using has your password in there, which has been breached to some sort of public network or some sort of dark web. And you can see which websites are affected. I know there were a few in the past. Adobe was certainly on this list. Dropbox was on this list at some point. Massive organizations are having this problem of passwords being exposed. Now, if one of those systems got hacked, your passwords are exposed. If you've used that password anywhere else, that system is also exposed, because chances are you've used the same email address across most of these. So your email and password has basically been put out in the wild for others to use. That takes you to a very weak perspective of shared passwords. Passwords can be brute forced, like you suggested. So how do we protect against this is the next question. What do we need to be doing to, let's start at the base level of, I've just got a username and password. You mentioned silly character passwords, 15 characters, you said takes 12 years, maybe use 20 characters, uppercase, lowercase, what have you. Is that enough? Do we need to be doing more than that to get a better level of security? And whose responsibility is that? The service provider, the website you're logging onto, or you as the service user, the one who's putting the password in?
I think there's a whole raft of things in there. The first thing is clearly you as an individual.
Yeah.
You need to take responsibility for the systems that you access and doing it responsibly. A password manager clearly is a massively brilliant tool for helping with that, but that's part of the picture. People that design websites and implement systems that don't enforce a level of complexity and password length, why on earth not? If somebody has a website out there which lets you put in a few characters and excludes numbers and symbols, because they haven't worked out how to deal with that yet, or for whatever their logical reason is.
Yeah.
They have a massive responsibility for not being a responsible provider. It's clearly not a sensible approach.
Just as you mentioned, it's not sensible to have small numbers of characters, but the onus is on the person inputting the password. Only because I've just thought of this is people always use a family member's name, a kid's name. They'll use a date of birth or an important date in their life, but these are common things. Passwords 1, 2, 3. And I still think there's a large portion of people out there that still do that, right?
Correct. And for that reason, if you want to brute force somebody's password, you don't just do it A, B, C, D, E sequentially. What you do is you pick the published list of the 10,000 most commonly used passwords and roll through them first. And that takes you a nanosecond or two. And for a lot of people, a scary number of people.
So we're saying the onus is definitely on the service provider to enforce something a little bit more secure. The user has to be a bit more mindful of the type of passwords they're choosing. But you mentioned something most probably very important, especially when you're using these random passwords. Get a password manager. Start throwing that in there, right?
It's the only way, and it serves two purposes for you. First thing it does is it lets you put in all the passwords you use, and therefore you don't have to remember them, which is the first important battle. It generates passwords for you, and a lot of the password managers, you can adjust the rules. So you can say how many characters you want, whether you're going to allow symbols or not, whatever the rules are for the website you're working on. You generate the most secure password that it will accept.
Yeah.
And the final point with the password manager is that it can police what you're doing, and it will tell you if you've reused. It will tell you if the password you've used has been breached. And it will prevent all of those issues by analyzing your list of passwords and working out how secure you really are. It gives you a very good measure of whether you've done your job right.
Tell me a little bit more about SSO and MFA, and how does that help secure your password?
SSO, single sign-on. It's a technique that lets you use a sign-in to somewhere that is secure and well protected. But so you sign into your Microsoft account, and from that, because you're signed into your Microsoft account, you get access to, in our case, our knowledge base, help desk systems, or whatever. They come in because you're signed into one, you get access to the other. And from a user perspective, it means you don't have to sign in twice. You've signed in once, and the once is secure. And because it's secure and you don't do it twice, you actually reduce the risk dramatically. And you simplify your world. And for the users, it makes it much easier because from their perspective, it's quick, it's easy. You just click the button and you're in.
And in this scenario, only Microsoft holds your password data in keeping it secure. That's never exposed to, let's say you're signing onto an internal company portal using your Microsoft SSO. Microsoft holds that password data. That password information never gets transferred to your company or the portal.
What's transferred is a token, and the token is used. It's a time-changing token usually so that it links the two sites together, and that gives you your access by virtue of the token that says, yeah, this guy's okay, you can go in. If the token is wrong, expired, or no longer live, then your access is blocked.
And the benefit of doing this, I think, is instead of having your company trying to hold all of these passwords, let's be fair, Microsoft has billions of pounds behind it all day, every day, trying to better their security. And it's not just Microsoft, it's the likes of Google, the Apples, and what have you. They've all got SSO. And the benefit here is they're managing the security. They're managing your passwords, the way you log in. You don't have to, as an organization, on your portals or the smaller companies building their portals, their websites, their systems. That's no longer their responsibility. Let them build and focus on what they're good at, not trying to also build and focus on a secure access system.
It's do you trust? If you trust Microsoft to do that job, then honestly, if you put all your data in Microsoft or put it all into Google, you've given the trust already, so you might as well go the whole hog. There's no reason why you shouldn't do so. Absolutely. The second reason for doing all this is the weakness in passwords, as I said earlier, is people. And that's what the strength of SSO is. is that same weakness of people. People are inherently lazy, and SSO is a lazy man solution because you just click the button and you're in.
Yes.
So it could not be quicker or simpler. If you gave somebody a username and password, they had to type in to get into that system, another one for that system, another one for that system. It's harder work. So SSO wins on that basis as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have opened a different door. So if somebody else sits down at your desk and you've left your machine logged on, then everything on SSO is available to them. You then need to think about shutting down your machine, locking your machine when somebody comes in, and if you're going away for a cup of tea, you're exposed to risk in that sense. But you've got to look at it in proportion. It's much lower risk than the risk of somebody out in the wild doing something to you.
How does Microsoft SSO provide you better level of security than a website we've built for internal operations with a standard username and password?
So Microsoft have locked their front door with lots of tech, and MFA is their current best solution for keeping the world out. Multi-factor authentication means that you have to authenticate two different ways. For example, your phone with Microsoft Authenticator is the standard way of doing it. So you're signing on your PC, it pops up with the alert on your phone, your key and the key number, and that's tied those two devices in. That technology, which is being invested in, is a key part of the process. Multi-factor authentication is brilliant. Something I am, something I know, something I have. That is the process of securing everything. I have to say, I think they've done it really well. When they first did it, they didn't have the key number to say. Now what they do is they present a number on the website saying, type this number into your authenticator, and you go to your mobile and you type that number in. And that brings the whole loop closed. So you're closing the fact that it's you doing it. You're on that website. You're on that mobile phone. Those devices must be in the same place and controlled by the same person. And the whole point is that because Microsoft have done genuinely a great job on that, there's security that I don't think a normal business could emulate.
There are multiple forms of MFA, multi-factor authentication. I know some banks, I logged onto my NatWest the other day, and they've got MFA where they send me a SMS message to my mobile. That's a form of MFA. There are arguments to say some people have been able to hack MFA by getting into people's SMS, and I guess they have to get onto your phone first. But you've got SMS as one. You've got these authenticator apps such as Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator. Authy is a personal favorite of mine. And they generate a code which you have to then put onto the website. I have to say, Microsoft sort of feels the most secure to me. They send a code on screen, which you then have to enter into your phone. That's where the security lies. You can't be in a different country because you can't see that screen and then enter this code. That was one of the problems they had earlier. It got quite fatigued, they called it. You just kept on pressing yes because it kept on coming up so many times. But now you have to physically put in that code onto your phone to get in. And through that, you can secure a number of websites.
And if somebody were doing the brute force 12 years approach, it wouldn't take you long to realize that was going on.
Because you keep seeing these pop-ups on your phone.
Continuously on your phone.
Someone's trying to get
And one
in.
of the things we say to all our clients, when we're teaching clients to use MFA and Authenticator on their phones, always think about, was it you that did it or not? And if it appears on your phone and you've not triggered it for any reason, say no and report it to us instantly. Yes. That's a standard message we give to all our clients. It doesn't happen often, but when it happens, it's been a lifesaver.
I have to say this, and it's really very controversial, but users are the weakest link in any form of security. You could lock everything down to the best of your abilities with all the latest technology. It just takes one user to mess everything up. They click the wrong link on an email, on a phishing scam, or download the wrong file, and that's exposed everything. I can't think of a scenario where a company has been breached where a user hasn't been involved. It just goes to show the focus on how important something like password is to security and how it's so dependent on the user being a little bit more intelligent, a little bit more wiser about their security and the security measures around them. Passwords being one big part of that whole user plan of security.
I think in this day and age, people need to start to build their lives around the concept of keeping themselves protected.
Yes.
And you mentioned using SMS as a form of authentication for MFA. And that's great, but it comes with risks. And it's being phased out because of SIM hacking or SIM swapping, where it's been too easy for somebody to substitute their SIM for your SIM on your line. And for a period of time, they have access to your code. And the interesting thing is because of the way we work MFA, which means you can have multiple MFA systems, multiple MFA devices. Once you've got access, the first thing your hacker does is set up their own MFA. They might set up a separate authenticated device on their phone. They might set up a separate mobile number to receive the SMS. Then they put back the damage so you don't notice that they've done that. But they then have free access because they've got their own ability to answer the MFA question. Yeah. MFA is not without problems, and it only takes one breach of that to expose the whole thing.
And once we've gone and done and dusted with passwords, what's the next level of security? There's got to be something which is better than passwords, which is moving on into the future. We always complain about passwords. I think the biggest gripe I have is not everyone has SSO. And in the space of a day, I've probably logged on to 20, 30 different sites. New password each time, new remembering which one was access to this. Yes, the password manager definitely helps here, but there has to be an easier method of logging onto things. And I know there's some technology obviously on your mobiles. If you're an iPhone fan, you've got Face ID, which lets you log into the phone. And all the banks are using that as their default security method. I can log onto my mobile banking app using my Face ID.
Scares me witless, to be honest.
Why does it scare you?
The biometrics are great, and they work tolerably well a lot of the time. Facial recognition, I personally I'm not convinced by that. I think there's way too much weakness in that system. It's very sloppy. So if you are doing facial ID, young people, old people, it's very unreliable for. If you've set yourself into a system, in a few years, you've aged a little bit, you've got a few more wrinkles, it no longer works for you. So it's not a reliable system over time for anybody. I have a concern. I mean, the way facial ID works, it works by mapping your face, identifying the locations of key bits of you, your eyes and your mouth and your nose, and creating a map. And then from the map comes a hash, and the hash is stored and sent and is used.
The hash is like an encryption key.
Correct. It's the consolidation of all that data into a single, very long string.
Yeah.
But that information comes from a photograph of you.
Can I put my phone up to a picture of me and let that unlock my phone?
That's the big question, isn't it? And the answer is no, but the answer is almost. And I just have a nagging doubt in the back of my mind that it won't take long for somebody, how many photographs of you are there on the internet, each at a different angle, each from a different perspective, a different lighting?
Someone's going to 3D print my face for unlocking.
Well, yes, they could, but terrifying prospect. But more importantly, feed that lot into an AI system that is going to work out what the hash would be for your facial ID.
Wow.
And then,
yes.
No, I'm not saying this is possible now, although it probably is. And then what they're going to do with it? That suddenly becomes a tool which you could use if that is your only line of defense. If it's just one simple, I mean, let's be honest, facially, you have to go some to do all that stuff right now. But if you're looking about the perfect solution for the future, I'm not convinced that it is right for everybody and for all time.
So we've got things like Face ID. What about fingerprint ID?
Fingerprint ID seems to be brilliant. The challenge is exactly the same, though. So fingerprint ID is great. We've got fingerprint ID on our front door. You put your fingerprint on it, unlocks the door, and in you go. Our MFA, by the way, for anyone that wants to rob our office, is we've also got an alarm system, which is totally separate. You need your fob, otherwise it don't work. Just to put that out there for everybody. But assuming you're not going to be doing anything devious, it works well because we've got a second layer of defense, and it's fine. But now, where is that information? It's stored in the reader. That's where the data is stored. And I have no issue with that whatsoever. But what would happen if some bright spark went along and said, here's this box that's got all of the data and all of these people's fingerprints. Can I reverse engineer that? Can I get that data out, work out their fingerprints and re-encode it for somebody else's system so I can do fingerprint IDs for somebody else?
So
say for your laptop.
You've got fingerprint ID on the front door. I've got fingerprint ID on my laptop. Many people use it on their laptop. That fingerprint ID, for all intents and purposes, is local storage. It stays on my laptop. It stays on your box in the office. What if we have, and I've seen it, cloud systems which allow you to use your fingerprint ID as opposed to a password to get into sites? Now, presumably that fingerprint ID, that hash code it generates by scanning your fingerprint ID, is stored in the cloud, which means they don't need physical access to your premises or your laptop or your box to get that hash code or even reverse engineer it.
This is the emperor's new clothes. This is exactly the problem. So all the biometrics are brilliant. They genuinely are brilliant. Convenience, fabulous. Put my finger on my laptop, it unlocks. You're sitting there of an evening, you don't want to kind of work out where the buttons are, your backlighting's not working on your keyboard, typing out a complicated password, that's a thing of the past. It all just works. It's genius. But the problem is, underlying that is a hash code. It's an encryption key. And yes, if it's not quite as simple as saying that hash is enough to unlock your world, because there's also the certificates and the codes, the tokens that pass between devices. I think this takes us neatly to FIDO as a point, because this is the absolute case in point of this A, problem, and B, the solutions to it. I don't know if FIDO's a familiar term to you.
I was about to ask you, what is FIDO?
So FIDO is a technology. It's now FIDO 2 because they've improved it. It's principally used it's a standard for securing biometric and other data. A FIDO 2 key is basically something you plug into the USB of your laptop.
Right.
It's maybe got a fingerprint scanner on it. If you've got a FIDO-enabled machine, then your mobile might be FIDO-enabled. That technology is used directly on the fingerprint scanner of the mobile and for your facial ID. The encryption process is significantly more secure than a normal process. You generate your data stored locally, generate a cryptographic key. And that's what's used to log in. But it's a hardware device, and you walk away from a computer, you take your hardware key with you, and that means nobody else can log into that machine because they don't have the key.
How does that compare to something like these YubiKeys? I know a lot of people use those in cryptocurrency, and people have got thousands, tens of thousands, millions of pounds stored away in cryptocurrency. There's got to be a good level of security behind that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is part of this same technology. The standard hardware security keys are for unlocking websites and local devices. So you've got your FIDO key in your machine. That will sign you into websites that are on that program, as well as into devices. That's fine. As far as crypto is concerned, then the game is slightly different, because the value contents is the keys that are stored on the device as well.
Right.
So your biometrics or whatever solution you choose to use gives you access to that device, and that gives you access to your crypto account, your crypto key, which gives you access to your money. The two are, one is an extension of the other. All this tech blends into the same thing. With FIDO, it's a set of standards. This is how you do it. This is how you run the process. And that, because you've got a standard way of doing things, it means that you can have a key in your computer which authenticates you into a website that's absolutely got nothing to do with the manufacturer of the key. They just use the same standards. And if that whole process works, then that's great.
Yeah.
And I suspect that is where the future's heading, although embedded rather than separate keys seems more sensible, because you can lose keys.
Is that similar to passkeys?
It's identical.
Yeah.
The passkeys work that way as well. Passkeys are an amalgam of different biometric authentications into one system. And that allows you access to whichever site or system you gain access to. So you sign into your Amazon account using a passkey, and that's full authentication from your biometrics straight in to that account. And if all the steps on the way are secure, then that's a secure process. I don't think anyone's going to have any issue with that as being the end game. The problem is, where are the weaknesses in that? Who are you trusting with? Passkeys, a great concept, falls down a bit for me when the Google approach is interesting. So Google say, use passkeys, it's completely secure and the data is all stored locally on your device.
I've seen all of this pop up on the web browser. I have to admit, I've rarely used it. I don't think I've set up any of it yet.
It's interesting how some people set that up because they think that all they're doing is entering the identifier, the PIN code for their local computer. And then they set up a passkey for the website they're signing into, Amazon account, Google account, whatever it might be. And you do it by accident, not even realizing you've done it. It's very easily done. The dialogue is not misleading exactly, but if you don't understand what it's asking, you give the answer to the question and then you're down a path. But Google's approach to me worries me because Google say this is all stored locally and that's fine. We don't retain any of your data. That's fine as well. And then they say, but we replicate it to all your devices. And that's where it all falls apart from my perspective.
It's got to be stored somewhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They replicate it to all of your devices. Now, what would happen? Imagine your malicious intent.
Yeah.
If you could get another device into that replication network, then your device has got the passkey on. Then what?
In this scenario where you're dependent on someone like Google to store your passkeys or any kind of biometric data, whose responsibility is it if something was to get breached? And let's just say, for example, you've got your e-commerce store and Google stores the passkey because you're using that SSO passkey in the scenario. But someone manages to get into the account and order a whole load of stuff and get it shipped to themselves and you're stung with a bill.
Welcome to our can of worms.
Big problems, aren't they?
Yeah, I genuinely think a lot of this stuff is very much work in progress. And I don't think anyone has all of the answers. That we're heading towards them. And I haven't actually read Google's T's and C's for passkeys, but I can imagine them using themselves from any liability because it's all your fault, not theirs. And that will doubtless get tested at some point in the courts because it is absolutely bound to happen.
Yes.
Self-defense is obviously the best thing, but you've also got to look at it in relative terms. This may have weaknesses. There may be ways that the data could escape. There may be ways that a problem could occur that you could be breached. But is it more likely to be okay than our current setup of using a password where you foolish, untrustworthy user have messed up by reusing a weak password? And without doubt, this new way of doing stuff is more secure. But is it secure enough? Does it shift the liability to somebody else? Or does it shift the control to somebody else and leave the liability with you? And I think those are the kinds of things that we have to worry about because Google will not take responsibility for this. Apple will not take responsibility for a misconfigured Face ID. It will be your issue. It's bound to be because it's your face.
Is it fair to call those technologies a bit more of a gimmick at the moment and the stopgap between passwords to biometrics, which is most probably where we're at the moment, moving on to passkeys?
But like I said earlier, the world's in transition. We're on a journey.
Yeah.
Where is the end point? There are people that think that the end point is an ID number for each individual person and stick it in a chip under their skin and you always know who it is. It all depends on what your end game is, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Who can tell? Retinal scans are supposed to be 100% foolproof.
According to the Matrix.
Absolutely. It's surprising. Go back to your Star Trek and think about how communicators suddenly turned into mobile phones. This stuff does come back to haunt us. People have bright ideas.
I'm going to be very honest with you. I've never watched Star Trek. I haven't a clue.
I am showing my age, but if you imagine a device which you could stick on your wrist or hold in your hand, where you could flip open the flappy bit and talk in it, and somebody a long way away could talk to you.
Well, we've already got that with the Apple Watch. I use it to make calls a lot of the time.
But then think this was something that arrived in science fiction.
Yes.
I don't even know how many years ago, but a lot.
I'm going to say 30 to 40 years, mate.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
And if we do the mathematics, you would normally be around in your 20s. I'm joking.
Oh, dear. I knew it was going to come down to this eventually with this conversation. It is interesting because it is a progression. And what we're doing right now, what everybody's doing right now, is they're sitting down saying, we have the tech. We could do this anyway. We have the ability to do this anyway. And what we're trying to say is, what is the way that gives us the best chance of identifying accurately who you are, preventing somebody from doing that maliciously and wrongly? People come up with different solutions, and Microsoft's invention of MFA plus addition of the numbers into MFA, into the Authenticator app, genius, but where's it going to end? Whose blue sky thinking is going to come up with a better way of doing it?
I mean, you've touched on a very important point there. If you are a business at the moment, think about startups, for example. You're developing a new app. You're developing the next greatest product in the world. How are you going to work on the security of authenticating users? You're saying biometrics is maybe not completely where we want it to be. You're saying passkeys are great. Things like Face ID you're not so confident in, but you are with fingerprint. Is it a waste of time and money sticking to the outdated passwords and management systems and just scrap all of that and go straight to the best product on the market at the moment?
That's a challenging question. I think companies are naturally lazy in just the same way that people are. So you're developing this brilliant product. You focus on the product. You don't focus on how it's secured. And secure by design is absolutely a critical part of the process developing new product. And it's expensive and there's no return. If you succeed in making something secure, then nobody's ever going to know that you've put that effort in. The only time it's found out is when it's not secure, and at that point, you'll pay the price. Security in the design of products is a big challenge. There's no immediate, obvious, quantifiable benefit to it. How do you do it? The answer is, if it's your area of expertise, happy days, crack on. But for most people, for most businesses, if you're putting something out there that's a web tool, for example, most people don't have the knowledge, the experience to build security and get in somebody with expertise, get in somebody that's got that tech, buy it in as a package.
And there are third-party companies which do that, right? Once your development team have finished building an app, for example, use the third-party organization to security test those apps for you.
Well, isn't this what we said earlier about using SSO? SSO is genius for that because Microsoft spent millions, Apple has spent millions, Google has spent millions. Make use of it. Link to their SSO. There's a documented path for doing that.
And they've got biometrics built into their SSO.
Completely. Yeah, because what it's about saying, sign in securely to Microsoft, sign in securely to Google. So passkey at Google, you're signing in using your Face ID, whether we like it or not, that's happening. Then once you have signed in and are secure, you take their word for it that has worked and is okay. And at that point, you can then say, SSO, I trust you because Google say so. And that genuinely works. And the other thing that you can do when designing your products is you layer things. I remember back in the day, we used to build e-commerce systems for websites, and you'd build a payment gateway. That's very much a thing of the past because payment gateways, the banks do all that stuff. So what happens is and then some third-party organizations, PayPal or whoever, and when you take a payment on your website, you just hand all that over to a third party. So you hand it over to the bank sends you the text, it asks you for a code, it asks you does whatever the bank is going to do. They secure the money flow and you just get a confirmation that it's been done by removing from your world the need to design and secure a payment. You don't need to handle credit card numbers and protect them. You don't need to protect people's names and addresses. All of that is handled by a third party.
And in a scenario where we're dealing with passwords, we're dealing with security, it'd be strange not to include GDPR in the conversation, especially here in the UK. What GDPR implications do companies have when it comes to these passwords, these biometric storage, everything around it? Because that is personal information, which even if you're employing somebody, they leave, they move to another company, you're still storing their biometric data for a given amount of time, I guess, aren't you?
I think this comes back to, the answer is yes, and it's really difficult to handle that because, yes, you're storing the data, but do you even have access to it? If I said to you, extract your fingerprint from your laptop, you'd look at me blankly and say, what?
It's true.
If somebody leaves a company, their account gets deleted, the account is no longer on the laptop, the biometrics have gone.
Yeah.
So it sort of doesn't matter. But there's going to come a day, when the day arrives that some bright spark manages to reverse engineer fingerprint data, or reverse engineer Face ID, or all of that stuff. If somebody can extract that data from a system, at that point, it becomes the responsibility and the liability of the person that holds the data to stop them doing it. And GDPR kicks in full force. It's hard to overemphasize the seriousness of what happens. If you start off and you've got password and somebody hacks your password, your solution's simple. Just change your password and you're off and running.
Yes.
If somebody has compromised your fingerprint, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
And the whole thing, the way where that goes, I don't know the answer. I don't think anyone knows the answer, because, if the fingerprint is translated into a hash and the hash is compromised, you're sunk. I don't think there's any way of getting back from that, because you can't change your fingerprints. You can't change your retina scan. You can't change your Face ID. I mean, you can grow a beard and change your hair and whatever, but that
Still
doesn't
not
actually
gonna
make a
change
lot
it
of
enough.
difference. No.
What about multi-layered security? So you need your password, your MFA code, and you need some sort of level of biometrics. And that's 3 layers of security. I'm not saying no one can guess your password or try and brute force and hack your password. I'm not saying people can't get onto your device and get access to your MFA code, because potentially at some point they can. And the same with the biometrics. But a 3-layered security, that's exactly what SSO is, isn't it? And that gives you enough reassurance that someone's got to get through all 3 to be able to get through to your system and access what you have access to, right?
100%. The peak of our security right now is layered.
Yes.
I said to you about our front door. Yes, fingerprint, but there's the alarm behind it.
Yeah.
So get through one, you still got to get through the other. And
not to mention the steel gates, the barbed wires, the
electric
snipers,
fencing. Yeah, that's
electric fences, just in case anyone's listening. Fully secure. It's military grade security around this office.
That's absolutely right. Putting those layers in place is key to it. And the layers of security, fine. But on top of that, there's the one thing we do routinely as part of the service we give our clients, is to monitor what's going on. So that when somebody, if somebody tries to break into your password, the MFA clicks up on your phone, you can spot that and you can deal with it. We would monitor, for example, take a 365 login. Somebody logs in to your UK business account from central Moscow. We get an alert, says, that's a bit odd. What's going on?
Yes.
And we would contact a client and say, are you in Moscow at the moment? This has genuinely happened, by the way. And the others know at the time they were in Turkey using a Russian mobile SIM, which is an interesting scenario. But those conversations happen on a daily basis here. The fact that we then take action immediately, we lock accounts, we block accounts, we question, we monitor, that's the other layer of security. It's the 4th layer. To me, that's critical. Monitoring what's going on makes sense. And it's the best we've got right now. Where it's heading, I don't know. It's an arms race. As soon as the tech companies invent a new solution, the hackers invent some new way around it. When MFA came out, they invented the reverse proxy, and everyone can then break into MFA. Right. If you're targeting an individual person, it's really hard to defend yourself. So you just have to do the best you can. If you're talking about a general attempt on the infrastructure of the world or a system, multi-layer works. And at the moment, that's the best we've got.
AI is going to make things a lot quicker and easier to do in terms of hacking, isn't it?
I lose track of the number of genuinely brilliant emails that are phishing emails that get through a lot of the spam filters, because what comes through looks so good. Gone are the days when you could tell it was a hacking attempt because it's written in pidgin English. To coin a phrase, it's a gibberish email, spelling mistakes and punctuation mistakes and things that wouldn't happen. They haven't got the right logos, whatever it might be. Now you receive a phishing email that looks and feels completely genuine.
Yes.
That's a bit scary. That's AI hard at work. The facial ID thing, if somebody can do, which they can now, an AI which fools people on a Zoom meeting to think they're talking to a person they're not talking to, they can do that in real time on video, and it's convincing.
Crazy scary, isn't it?
It is crazy scary when you're relying on that same image to unlock your phone.
It goes back to what you said earlier. We're not far away from some AI piecemealing all of your photos together and giving it to a 3D printer to say, right, here, go and print this. And you've got a almost instant replica of your face without ever having stood still to pose for somebody to get it done.
It's a demonstration that's been done many times. When the banks first released telephone banking, probably before your time, they did it with voice recognition. It's perfectly secure, works brilliantly, until it didn't. And it was easily demonstrated that this was a stupid idea. But nowadays, can you imagine how simple it is to have AI replicate your voice? And you can do it. Anyone that's got 10, 15 minutes of their, how long have we been on this card? Right. 10 or 15 minutes of their voice on the internet, you can produce a completely lifelike replication of that voice. Wow. So if you can do that with voice, you can do it with video, you can do it with face. You've got to accept that all of those things are going to happen. And there's nothing you can do to turn, you can't put the call, AI will do this stuff.
Now, let's try and summarize with some practical tips we can give to organizations on how to better their security, managing their internal staff, as well as how they're accessing websites, how they are logging onto things in the cloud. You've got your Microsoft platforms, your Microsoft 365s or your Google Workspaces. Those are the big key ones which most organizations are using. What levels of security can they implement here today to better that?
Wherever you are in the security journey, you can always go a step further. There's some really simple stuff. If you haven't turned on MFA, turn it on, because MFA is absolutely a requirement. There are very few services that don't use it.
I was about to say, it's by default the most common thing to do now, right?
Correct, but you'd be astonished how many systems still don't have that enabled.
Yes.
It's not helped by some services not mentioning large social media concerns, removing the MFA facility unless you pay for it, which was not necessarily a positive move.
No.
But yeah, implement MFA instantly, immediately. That's straightforward.
All
remove
platforms.
If it's an option, turn it on.
Yes.
And if it's not there as an option, demand that it be, because there's absolutely no excuse in this day and age. Remove all forms of password sharing. Password sharing should not ever happen. If you need to share access to a service, use a password manager so the sharing can be done without people actually knowing or sharing the password itself. It's being done cloaked by a password manager, but you shouldn't need it. You should be able to get around that a different way. So get rid of all forms of password sharing. Now, somebody goes on holiday, so somebody else logs in as them. No, absolutely not. Yeah. Give that person access to that person's account or the bits of it they need while they're on holiday, fair enough. But don't make them pretend to be that person. That's ridiculous.
I agree.
Adopting biometrics everywhere. Every laptop you buy hasn't got a fingerprint scanner on it. It's the wrong kind of laptop. That's just ridiculous in this day and age. If you've got a mobile phone that hasn't got a PIN code on it or Face ID to go through on the biometrics, then that's foolish, frankly. It's stupid. You've got to have some form of self-defense.
Yes.
I like the fingerprint reader on mobile because you can't shoulder surf it. Nobody can see your code. The code is always there if you need to go back, or the pattern. Once again, people can watch them. And you have to be really good at entering a pattern so nobody can see it. I'm not that good. Maybe you are. So I like the fingerprint because you just put your finger on it. It's stuff.
Funny you mentioned that. I was in the car with my kids the other day, and I've managed to get my 8-year-old to the age of 8 without giving him my password to my phone. I always use Face ID. And the other day, Face ID wasn't working for whatever reason, and I had to put in the password. I could see him peering over my shoulder, trying to figure out my password, the PIN code to get into the phone because the Face ID wasn't working. And I was like, I just had one eye out of the corner of my eye looking at him. And I was like, right, this needs to go under my hood or a coat jacket, then bring it out. But it just goes to show you don't know who's looking over your shoulder to see you entering any of this stuff in, which is where things like Face ID and fingerprint really come in. And that's the level of MFA you want to have on your device to
Correct.
ensure it's secure.
And you can add users. These days, you can add other users into your device. So you can say, if you want kids to have access to your mobile phone, you can give them an ID.
Please don't suggest that.
I didn't say that. Nobody said that. No, there was nothing was said. But you can control it. The whole point of the exercise is control everything. But biometrics everywhere that you can, that's absolute requirement. And then start to educating people, or everybody in every organization should have some form of security awareness training. They should be shown, because people, it's hard. I mean, we work in IT. I work for an MSP. IceConnect does this day in, day out, and you know this stuff instinctively because it's what you do all the time. Normal people don't get a sense of how bad things can be when you mess up. And it's really important to show people what the consequences are of their actions. Now, to explain, a good thing is the Twitter hack of a few years ago, when the President of the United States starts sending out tweets for a crypto scam.
Yeah.
And the underlying cause of that problem was password sharing.
We see that a lot in the social media space, don't we? People getting hacked, especially on Instagram. People get hacked and suddenly they don't have access to their old accounts. Someone started messaging out all of their contacts and stuff. I've noticed it and heard about it on Twitter a few times as well.
WhatsApp as well. It's a common thing for WhatsApp scam. The process is comparatively straightforward. It's just social engineering. And at the end of it, you've lost control of your account. And it can take so long to get your stuff back. And sometimes, because you can't always get a response from a large social media company, not mentioning Facebook by name, obviously. But, try and phone up their help desk and get some assistance with an issue. You get the sound of silence.
Yes.
It's just impossible. They've got some great automated systems, don't get me wrong, but sometimes you need to talk to a person and say, this is how I got here. Can you please get me out of it? And it's very hard.
There was one other practical idea, which I thought was very useful, you mentioned earlier, which was password managers. The purpose of having a password manager is it allows you to have those stupidly long passwords with random characters and punctuation all over the place. And ultimately, no two sites should share the same password. And if you've got 1,000 sites, the password manager is exactly where it should be stored. They're secure enough to keep your passwords there. And if you have little faith in those levels of security on a password manager, don't forget you've got that MFA level of security, multi-layered security already. So it's just one step in the chain of being secure.
And people say, well, what happens if the password manager gets hacked? And that has happened, to be fair. But the answer is that it's still much safer than the alternative of trying to do it in a secure way with passwords. My password manager says to me every time I sign into it, there are, I think it's 75 duplicate passwords in my system. The reason, by the way, is because some websites have multiple URLs. So I've entered them several times to cover the different URLs. It's actually the same site and the same password. So that's the reason. So you've got, you can play the game and work out which one's duplicates and deal with the problem.
Yeah.
It is very cool. And it's not perfect, but it's part of the stages to go through. While we have passwords, that is 100% the only sane approach.
Yeah.
So let's say you were ill or heaven forfend, you had an accident and weren't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to all of your world that's in your brain that's locked up in all these passwords? And a password manager enables you to offer emergency access to a trusted third party. So you can say, in the event that I'm not able to deal with stuff for a bit, this gives you access to everything that I've got so that you can sort out my world while I'm not able to.
Or in the essence of a business, if someone has left but they managed to create all the passwords in the accounts, it manages the owners or senior team leaders to access those accounts after that employee has left, right?
Completely. And it's about keeping your the value of your business to you. It's the same thing about mobile phone numbers. Do you give all your clients your staff's personal mobile phone number? If you do that, then when they leave, they take the clients with them.
Yes.
If you give them a business number, the clients stay with the business.
Yeah.
That it's sort of common sense. Businesses evolve over time and they don't always know that stuff. I spend my life going around different businesses and saying, okay, what you're doing is really great. I can see how you've got here. The next steps for you are this, this, and this. One of them is dealing with phone systems and getting the phone numbers sorted out. Exactly as I said, personal mobiles are a particular risk. Keeping the value of your business internally, as you said, with passwords, that's really important. Absolutely. Because you then retain access and you can't be held to ransom. When somebody leaves under a cloud, let's say, if they refuse to give up the goods, what are you going to do?
Yeah, very true. Adrian, thank you very much for joining me on this podcast today. It's been very insightful talking to you and a lot of information to absorb in just one session, I have to be honest. But the tips at the end, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Haree. Appreciate the invite, and it's been a delight talking to you.
All right, that brings us to the end of today's episode on passwords and biometrics. A huge thanks to Adrian for joining me in this great discussion. Remember, whether you're considering passkeys, biometrics, or both, the key takeaway is to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to security. If you want more advice or have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at thecyberceo.com. We're always happy to help.
Thanks for tuning in to the Cyber CEO podcast. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow entrepreneurs. For more tips on tech and business growth, visit our website, thecyberceo.com. Keep innovating, and see you in the next episode.